Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear students, Assalamu alaikum. The topic of today's video lecture is clauses. Clauses have too much importance in English grammar. From linguistics point of view, it has got much importance. If you understand clauses, it shall be easier for you to understand the rest of the structures in English grammar. It will be easier for you to understand the types of sentences, for example, complex sentences, compound sentences, and simple sentences. It shall also help you to understand the conditional sentences. What the clauses are? Clauses are groups of words that contain both a subject and a predicate. Subject, as you know, is a part of sentence that we are talking about, and predicate is a part of sentence that gives us information about subject. So even a simple sentence which should have at least a subject and a predicate, that can be called a clause. Well, there are two main types of clauses: independent clauses, which can be function independently as sentences, and dependent clauses, which depend on an independent clause to form a sentence. We shall first discuss what the independent clauses are. Independent clauses, also known as main clauses, it is a clause that forms a complete independent thought. It does not require anything else to be considered complete, and so it can stand alone as a sentence. In other words, if I explain this, a type of sentence which has a subject and a predicate, and it can give its complete meaning without taking help from any other sentence, from any other clause or any phrase. It is independent clause because it stands on its own and it conveys its message without taking help of any other sentence or a phrase. Let's look at sentences. A single independent clause is known as simple sentence because in simple sentence we have at least a subject and a predicate that gives information about subject. It contains a subject and a predicate, each of which can have a modifier. For example, I refuse. I is a subject and refuse is predicate, which gives information about I. In sentence number 2, they like to stay in fancy hotels. Now, they like to stay in fancy hotels. They is the subject. Like to stay in fancy hotels is the predicate that gives information about they, which is the subject. So if we read this sentence from beginning to end, we can understand what does it mean. The girl in the red jacket ran quickly towards the bus. The girl in the red jacket. In the red jacket is a adjective phrase which gives information about the girl. Ran is a verb, quickly that verb, towards the bus. Towards is preposition which shows the direction and the bus is noun. Well, the girl in the red jacket is all a subject. Ran quickly towards the bus, that is the information about the girl in the red jacket, so it's a predicate. If we read this sentence again from the girl to the bus, we can understand what the speaker would like to mean. The Beatles were a great band. The Beatles is a subject, were a great band is a predicate that gives information about the subject, the Beatles. So it's a complete sentence. It can give its meaning without taking help of any other sentence. I wish it weren't Monday. I is a subject. Wish it weren't Monday is a predicate, is information about I, that is a subject. So if we read all these sentences, 5 sentences, we can understand that all these sentences gives a complete meaning. So in this sentence, this sense, we can say that they are independent clauses. All independent clauses can be simple sentences, but they can be separated with conjunctions, with commas, and with semicolons as well. She wanted to play tennis. This is a complete sentence. He wanted to play basketball. This is also a complete independent clause. But these both clauses have been separated with the conjunction but, which shows the contrast. My brother lives in Detroit. I wish I lived there. I wish I lived there. That is a complete sentence. My brother lives in Detroit. That's also a complete sentence. These two complete sentences, these two complete clauses have been separated with semicolon, but on their own, both the sentences are independent clauses, because if we just read one, I wish I lived there, that gives complete meaning. So in this way, we can say they are independent clauses. Now we are coming towards the dependent clauses. A dependent clause, also called subordinate clause, is a clause that relies on the information from an independent clause to form a complete logical thought. As such, it can't stand on its own to form a sentence. So this dependent clause depends on the independent clause for its complete meaning, because it alone cannot give its complete meaning. It does not make any sense if we do not take the help of independent clause. So it can't stand on its own. All dependent clauses are usually marked by dependent words such as subordinate conjunctions, relative pronouns, or relative adverbs, which link them to independent clauses in a sentence. Whenever I travel, whenever shows the time, so it's a relative adverb. Whenever I travel, now whenever you travel, what happens? You need some other information to complete this dependent clause, and that information is I like to stay in fancy hotels. I like to stay in fancy hotels, that is complete independent clause, which add to the information of the previous sentence, whenever I travel, which is a dependent clause. So whenever I travel depends for giving its complete meaning on the rest of the sentence, that is independent clause. We struck up with conversation with a person whom we met on the plane. Whom is pronoun here. It's a relative pronoun. It refers to the person whom we struck up a great conversation. So whom relates is the whole dependent clause, whom we met on the plane. That is a complete sentence, but that's a dependent clause. If we do not read the previous sentence, we struck up a great conversation with the person whom we met on the plane does not mean anything without the help of the previous sentence. She found it strange that they like to eat sushi. That they like to eat sushi depends on the previous sentence. She found it strange. So, my dear students, the purpose of today's video is to make you understand the difference between the dependent and independent clause. Dependent clause give its meaning without the help of any other phrase or a clause. Independent clause depends on, dependent clause depends on the independent clause to complete its meaning, and they are always made with relative pronouns, relative adverbs, and subordinate conjunctions. In each of the examples above, the groups of the word in bold are clauses because they have a subject, I, we, and they. As I told you earlier, that if a sentence has subject, and here are the examples, I, we, and they are the subject, and a predicate, travel, met me on the plane, and like to eat sushi, these are the predicates. So they are clauses if they have subject and predicates, and if they give their meaning without the help of any other sentence, they are independent clauses. But if they depend for giving their complete meaning on independent clause, they are dependent clauses. For further understanding of the clauses, we shall study the types of the clauses, but I limit this class up to this, and in next class we shall discuss the types of the clauses, adverbial clause, noun clause, and other types of clauses, adjective clause. But in today's lesson we have understood what the clauses are, what are the independent clauses, and what are the dependent clauses. Hope you would have understood, and if you have, then it is your duty to please subscribe and share with the other students, and keep waiting for other videos. Thank you very much.